Hello? No. See, where's Toby when you need them? Hello? Okay. Herbert, where's Herbert? Herbert is, come on, go. Introduce me.
Oh, am I introducing? Okay. Lightning talks. There is still a little space if someone has a last minute idea. I want to quickly tell about something. We kind of thought it's nice to start with lightning talks, so people just get a bit of a feeling of which people are working on what, so during the rest of the day you can find them again and talk about stuff. So yeah, I don't think there's much to say. I don't want to take time off these people because they're all going to have only 3 minutes or so. And I wonder if you found a nice sequence in yourselves of what would be nicely following after each other, or we just start on the left and go to the right. If you think after one talk or during one talk, you're like, oh, my talk really fits after this, just organize among yourselves. And I mean, it's an unconference. We're not very strict on what happens when and how. So you look very enthusiastic. Do you want to start?
Yeah, so much.
Are you using screen?
No.
There is still for distraction.
Put something in front of it. Oh, yeah. She can wear it.
Feeling of which people are.
Hello. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Leo. Go by Kawaii Punk on all the things. Yeah, I'm not really have a prepared talk or anything. I just wanted to start a thread of conversation. Probably not going to fit into this very short couple of minutes, but something to think about when you're going through the day. Maybe we could talk about it later as well. I'm part of a tech workers cooperative called Autonomic, and I basically wanted to raise the question or the proposition of we're all into decentralized tech, we're all into federation, distributed systems, all this sort of stuff, but I think we also need to be thinking about the organizations behind what we were doing. So rather than just the technology or the code itself, the organizational structures that we choose to use behind what we're doing. And obviously I'm slightly biased in that, but yeah, bosses suck. We don't need them. Sorry if you're a boss. You shouldn't be. Quit. Change your business into a workers' co-op. But yeah, so if you're not familiar, a workers' co-op is a business or some sort of collective thing that is part of its constitution or its rules is that it is held in common between the people that are involved in the project. So many of you are probably already involved in a lot of stuff already that has this structure. Maybe you're just not calling it a cooperative, or there's many other words for it. It doesn't really matter. But I'd also like to propose that in the tech industry, we should be thinking about these structures. And yeah, if you are interested in finding out more about the stuff, there's a massive network of tech co-ops which look more like sort of traditional, well, they can look like more sort of traditional tech companies in the UK. We're called Cooperative Technologists, and our website is coops.tech. There's about 32, including many that are based in London. There's some people who are in this organisation who are here today. And yeah, let's try and take that conversation a little bit further, maybe later. Thanks.
Yeah, you're also welcome to talk less than 3 minutes. That's perfect. Who wants to go next?
Hi, my name is Simon, and I want to talk very briefly about decentralized commons standardization. What's the challenge? And I've made notes so that I don't run over time. So it's really three issues: why standards are vital to a decentralized web and to decentralization more generally. What are the big problems we're facing? And how we might approach doing something more constructive. Now, for number 3, you'll have to come to our session. But so I'll just do 1 and 2. So what's the problem? So firstly, why are standards and interoperability vital to decentralization? I think probably you all agree with this, but what would happen if we didn't have GSM, HTML, HTTP? I mean, we all just live, they're so obvious that we don't even realize what they are, that we realize that they're there. And my sense is that we will need more commons-based interoperability standards, more, not less, as we dismantle the power structures which could have imposed central standards. So that's my kind of basic idea. Sure, some standards have worked fine in the past. Let's not chuck those away. And there are two, I'm going to just outline two big problems just for you to think about. One is an organizational factors, and the second is personal factors. The first, organizational factors. Who has actually worked on a standardization committee? Which ones? Briefly shout them out, yeah? Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay. So within what body? W3C or? Okay. W3C. Has anybody worked with? Okay, right. Well, anybody worked with ISO or yeah? Okay. Okay. So the problems really. First, the problem: the standards world, BSI, CEN, ISO, the sort of official stat. They've got it. Do you know what their process? They work bureaucratically. They don't have open processes. They sell copies of standards. It's not free or open. No, it's a real problem. W3C done lots of great essential work, but for example, they are criticised for following big business interest, EFF resignation in 2017, for example. None of these things are free from abuse by money. Second, personal factors. Lots of people involved in standardizations are great, do excellent work, I'm sure you will do. However, some people are paid for by their businesses, so they're not going to be able to be impartial. And the other problem I found is that other people are experts and they may find it difficult to see other people's point of view. In my experience, it's rare to find standards people who have a good training in consensus working. That's a real personal issue. So, you know, too many of the people haven't developed a mindset which enables efficient and effective collaboration. So we want up-to-date technically good standards and protocols governed by the commons, to meet as many needs of people and businesses as possible, especially for open decentralized platforms and co-ops. But how do you want to do it? Well, I don't know. If you want to participate, you know half of the answer. Come to our session and talk about it.
And I just want to talk briefly about decentralized identity and kind of where we're at with it. I say we rather presumptuously. I don't presume to speak for the whole community, but I want to make you aware that there is one. And since identity is kind of a thread that runs through a lot of movements towards decentralization, just sort of want to let you know what else is going on out there. So this was sort of first started becoming a more mainstream conversation at the Internet Identity Workshop. Has anybody here been to that event? Yeah, it's freaking awesome, right? It's run in this format. It's an open space thing. It's been running for 14 years. The one that happened a couple of weeks ago had 300 attendees, which was amazing. And back in 2015, some people started saying, look, there's a lot of interest in blockchain and kind of getting decentralized networks to scale. Maybe we could apply that to identity. A lot of people said they were crazy. We've got OAuth, that'll work really well. You know, fast forward to today, and like I said, 300 attendees at IIW, about half the sessions devoted to practical applications of decentralized identity. You've got the Decentralized Identity Foundation, started 2 years ago. Of all people, it was a Microsoft executive that actually found the initial founding money for that, but they've now got something like 60 members from all across industry and non-profit in there. And then there are groups that are actually sort of running networks to bring this about. So there's Hyperledger has no less than 3 decentralized identity projects happening there. A group that I was involved in the genesis of called the Sovereign Foundation runs a public network for decentralized identity that now has 70 organizations called stewards that are running nodes, and they're decentralized in terms of geography, jurisdiction, and vertical market. So big companies like IBM and Cisco and teeny nonprofits and the Red Cross and all kinds of folks doing that. And there's a real move towards standardization. So these things aren't trying to all fragment and go off in different directions. You've got the W3C, which despite their foibles mentioned earlier, are really trying to say, look, we screwed up. The web should have had identity from the get-go. Let's try and fix this. And so there's 2 standards under development there. One for decentralized identifiers, right? So IDs that you don't rent from a telco or an email provider or whatever. you truly own and can cryptographically prove are yours. And another for verifiable credentials, so a way that you can take these, whether they're government issued or self-attested, these sort of physical documents that we rely on all the time, about yourself in a number of different contexts. So you've got a move towards standardization, you've got a community of people working on it, you've got a vibrant set of open source projects, not just a Hyperledger, you've got Uport building on Ethereum, you've got Microsoft made a big contribution with a thing called Sidetree. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and I suspect it's involved in some of your work, or if it isn't, should be. So I'm going to be geeking out about this all day, and I hope to sort of plant that seed, and if some of you want to talk to me, that'd be great. Thanks.
This is a bit tall. Can I move? Perfect. I can do my ballerina pointy feet, but not for 3 minutes. And my plays are awesome. You should check them. Well, I'm here originally to talk about an add-on I built for Firefox. But I wondered, who here has heard of Secure Scuttlebutt? Oh, so I can actually talk about the add-on, because I was thinking like, maybe people don't know it. So my name is André. I go by Soapdog because teenage decisions on nicknames are horrible. And I'm building an add-on for Firefox that's a Secure Scuttlebutt client inside the browser, because there is no point in building a decentralized web and throwing the current web on the bonfire. Like, we need bridges. We need our user agents, the browser, to go where we want them to go. And if we want to go to a decentralized world, we need the browser to come with us. We need to be able to link from decentralized protocols such as Scuttlebutt, IPFS, DAT, into the normal web and back. And to do that, we need the add-ons. So I'm personally building Patchfox. You are welcome to reach me after this talk and take a look into it. I hope it doesn't explode. And later, we are having a Scuttlebutt onboarding session. So I can show you the apps that you can install. We can onboard you, because our main friction point right now is onboarding. So if you're curious about it, don't miss it, because we can make onboarding a pleasant experience. Thanks a lot for having me here. And who's next? Oh.
Can you give 2 sentences about what Scuttlebutt is for anyone who doesn't know?
Yes, I can. So Secure Scuttlebutt is an offline-first decentralization platform. We build a social network on top of it. And we build like NPM registries, Git registries. We can basically use it to build anything. What it is, it works like gossip. You carry all your data on your device. You carry all your friends' data on your device. And you carry all your friends' of friends' data on your device. Which means you can be flying over the Atlantic with years' worth of social graph data on your machine, liking cat photos, exchanging vegan junk food recipes, as if the internet was there, but it isn't. When you reach a friend, it will gossip, it will sync all that data, and eventually reach the rest of the network. So if the future brings us to a Mad Max kind of reality, Scuttlebutt will be really helpful.
Hello. Hello. Good morning. So I'm Sarvan. I work on the Solid project, short for social linked data. Some of you may have heard of it, or we were here also in 2015. Yeah.
2015.
Right. And so I'm here to talk about or exchange ideas around this project. If you're not familiar with it, it's a project around how people can control their own data, who can access it, and how can they distribute that access. So I'll just ask you a question or make a statement, and then ask you whether you agree or disagree. It's kind of a general, but let's see. So data on the web should not be locked into particular systems or be only readable by the applications which created it. users should be free to switch between applications and share data between them. I think that covers pretty much, I think, most of what we're all working on or aiming towards. But I think what we're partly interested in is also making sure that not just the technology that we're coming out with, but the solutions, whether they're ethically grounded and how they tie in with the rest of the standards on the web. So I think others have already mentioned how we can bridge standards, because there are standards everywhere, and they're coming from different communities, people with different backgrounds or interests, agendas. And so somehow we need to also, part of what makes the web is it's social, so we need to be more social about it. And how do we go about that? So happy to share, exchange around this project. Thanks.
I was going to say, who here has actually heard of Solid or used it? Well, look at that. I feel like what a famous project. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about Solid is it's like a personal data store, helping people use their own and control their data. There's lots of different interesting personal data stores. I wrote about personal data stores in a blog post where I was mean, and I apologize.
Do that. Yeah, so I'm gonna pick up on the Mad Max piece, and I'm going to talk about something quite different. I come from a technology background, but haven't actually done any coding or built any systems for a long time, because I kind of do economics and policy type stuff. Anyway, what I'm here to talk about, or just want to share a little bit about, is about system change in the context of the climate crisis, and the work I'm doing in this space at the moment, and how. And the reason this is relevant is, for example, we all hear about energy transition. We need to change our energy systems. The fundamental thing that we need to do with a lot of these things is decentralize them and think about them in a different way. A lot of the talks that I give talk about our digital ecosystem as one of the key tools to enable this, to empower this, to change the way we do economics, to change the way we do energy transactions and trade. So the project that I'm working on actually focuses at a global level. I think there's a lot of good people who are doing a lot of good things at a local level, at a city level. There's a lot of people very strongly engaged. I know I probably should have asked for a show of hands as to who even believes in climate change here. I'm hoping I've got a good audience here, but you never know. You come into audiences and you get heckled because people say it's all nonsense. Anyway, so I'm trying to do something because I think the UN and the UNFCCC, which is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, have a fundamental problem. And climate change is a global thing, like the atmosphere, and we're not going to fix it unless we address it also at a global level. I have a framework and a peer-published, peer-reviewed paper that has an economic model which can start that ball rolling. It's kind of a wedge. It's not going to fix all of the world's economics or all of the decentralization problems, but it's a start. I've modeled this, and what I thought could be useful, or what I've been speaking to a lot of the people who are helping me with the communications and how to build communities and how to try and get people engaged on this framework that I've built. And by the way, the framework is called Dracula, just so that you don't forget it. The thing that we were thinking about is to try and find a way to gamify it. I know gamification is something that a lot of people go about, but the idea is that this is a more efficient way of different countries dividing up, taking and owning responsibility for portions of the problem, and helping solve it. So my framework has both competitive, which I think is necessary because some people want to compete, and collaborative incentives in the way they build it. And what I wanted to try and do is try and find a way to gamify that so that people can start playing it, so that people can start engaging with it and trying to solve climate change themselves if the world order worked slightly differently, if the economics worked slightly differently. And I envisage this as potentially being the starting point of a sort of digital ecosystem that starts with gamifying, gathers data, uses data, enables other people to engage with this subject, and start building an ecosystem, start building a community of interest, distributed communities of interest that are trying to target different elements of it. If at the end of the day Dracula gets found out to be the crap version, and there's a better economic framework or whatever, that's great by me. I just want to sort of get the ball rolling. I had a bunch of slides, but I think better to just talk about it, and if anybody wants to come and talk to me, I'm also open to We don't have to do the gamification. If somebody just says, well, actually what you really need to do is communicate this better, then that's great. Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Sasha.
I'm going to try to be short. Hey, I'm Jack. The thing I want to kind of move in here is the thing why I actually appeared in here. So this Redecentralize movement and all, it's super nice. But let's say we ask this business kind of question, so what is in it actually for the end user? I mean, we've got the privacy right kind of argument and the resilience against monopolies, but like, what else can we actually offer to the end user? Like, can we propose any like features that the current monopolies don't give us? Like that's the reason I came here. Like I quit my job 2 months ago. Actually, I flew in here because I got pissed. Like why these clients I use, they don't give me any possibility to choose the content that is given to me. Like why do I have to open different apps? Why cannot I publish it to like once? There's problems with moderation, right? It's not transparent. It's like every silo has their own moderation, and then like. So it's either terrible or it's kind of, we don't know how it is. And so how can maybe we could make it kind of open so the user is able to choose what he actually reads. And so like all of these ideas, can we have more of them? Maybe we can actually come up with like specific ideas, features that are useful for the user. And so later on, when we maybe they're not possible at this moment, right, because of some privacy policies like the API is closed and so on. But if we have those ideas, maybe it's going to be easier to pitch them to regulate those ideas. And so yeah, of course, it also relates to the bridge idea, which means okay, we can build alternatives for social media, and it's a good start, definitely a good start. But maybe we should also think more and think about, okay, how we can actually make it usable for the end users so they don't have to leave the current platforms and also use the new ones. Thanks.
Basically the same thing, but more. Hello, I am Harshal or Will from the Matrix area over there, and I am basically Mr. Bridges in that area. Go closer to the microphone. Hello, everyone. So on that topic, we are basically developing platforms which let you bridge in your Slack, your Twitter, your IRC, anything you like, into one platform with one standard. And it's fantastic, because it basically means if your organization uses Slack, you can just leave it alone and use your own thing. All that kind of thing is perfect for our use case, and it means you can retain your own data, your own rights, that kind of stuff. And I'm quite passionate about, retaining the rights to own your own conversations and not have some organization pull it out from underneath you because they've hosted somewhere else. So on that topic, I think it's quite an interesting thing. All I really want to say is we're going directly into that topic later as a talk, and we're going to discuss how do we do bridges, how do we... I'll just project to the audience and then someone can hear it on the web. So yeah, this is fundamentally what we're going to talk about later, about how do you make bridges, how do you make people use the platform you want to use, how do you integrate everyone and keep everyone on board with your stuff. Finally, on the standardized thing, the way I think we can compete with the whole user-induced experience is by adding features at a faster rate and improving, having more collaboration. And because it's an open platform, you can get different perspectives from different people. And you're not having one person say yes or no to these features, because you're an open platform. You can just sort of increase your feature level and make people want to use your stuff purely by being an open standard, I think. I'm rambling, but that's more or less the point of what we do later. Thanks.
Hi, so my name is Mikael. I just wanted to talk to you about a project I've been working on. Who here is using GitHub or GitLab and doesn't have some sort of what happens if feeling? Thank you. All right. So the project I've been working on is called Gitbug. It's a distributed bug tracker that embed in Git. What that means is that if you are using Git, if you have a Git repository and a Git remote, you can have a bug tracker for free. It's distributed, so you just push your bugs to your remotes, and you can collaborate with other people like this. It works offline because all of your bug issues are in your repo. It prevents vendor locking because, well, you're not dependent on them anymore. It's fast, everything is local, so reading an issue is a matter of milliseconds instead of doing a web request. It doesn't pollute your project. You can work as usual. Gitbug is just using Git as a sort of transport and a database. It doesn't conflict with your usual file. It integrates with your tooling. You can use the interface you want. There's a command line interface, there's interactive terminal UI, and there's a web UI. I will show you. And last but not least, there's bridges with GitHub and GitLab, so you can import your issue and pull your issue while you are working on it. So that's the command line tools, and the terminal, interactive terminal UI. It's like this. You can use whatever text editor you want. I use Nano because. There's also web UI. You can start locally and work on it. Still a bit crappy, so if you want to work on it, contact me. What else? That's pretty much it.
Is this going to mirror by default, or? Always the mirroring. Arrangements, mirror. That's all right. That's the classic, like, 3 hardest problems in computer science, right?
No, Tantek can take it.
Hey, look at that.
Right, do you have the URL for the
I do. I tweeted it at Redecentralize.
Okay, so now
It's yeah.
Twitter has locked me out of Redecentralize.
Oh, really?
So
Oh, that's a great segue.
All right.
Thanks, Serena. All right, my name is Tontek. The .com is silent. I'm also at T on Twitter when it's not blocked. This is my website. I figured I would show more than tell as far as I could. I have been posting on my own site instead of Twitter for almost 10 years now, since 2010, because I got very frustrated with them about 10 years ago and built my own stack with a bunch of folks. Literally every note I posted on my site is here. This is like no big deal these days. People use things like Mastodon instead. So of course I do things like also post replies. But in addition, I can post replies to tweets, and that's do it for my site, and the site posts it automatically to Twitter and threads it. So I don't need to like have everyone on my system in order to interact with them, which I think is a really important principle of anything decentralized, is composability and bridging. And it's never an either or. We should always try to bridge across systems. So that's the principle there. Also photos. Again, you've seen lots of things that post federated, decentralized photos. The key is you want to be able to also have folks that follow you on other systems like Twitter also post them, also see them wherever they want to see them, without me having to use Twitter's UI and deal with all the toxicity there. What about events? So events, I claim, should be decentralized as well. I post this to my own site, and then there's a copy on Twitter, and then you can add it to your calendar if you use some other calendaring system. Again, all these things work via standards like ICS, ICAL, existing standards. We just saw decentralized Git issues. Well, what if you use your own site to post issues instead? I would claim that you should own all your own issues, not put it on someone else's decentralized site. Because you can, of course, post a copy automatically to wherever they're aggregating it as well, whether that's on GitHub or somewhere else. And all of this works via services like Bridgie that can handle all this for you. Like, I didn't need to write to GitHub's API and all those others to make that work. I was able to use a service and an open standard called Web Mention, a W3C recommendation. This is one of about a half dozen recommendations that the Social Web Working Group published and is out there working. Test suite, dozens of implementations for peer-to-peer sharing out there. There's many more, spec.indieweb.org if you want to see a bunch of the building blocks there. If you want to get started with your own personal site and like how do you actually join and federate and all that, indiewebify.me. There's, of course, a chat channel, like every other awesome project here, chat.indieweb.org, except there's a little bit different here, is that we've actually bridged this to Matrix, of course. You can use Matrix, you can use Discourse, you can use IRC if you're old school. That's where we started. That's our canonical copy as well. Or Slack, even. So all that works. You can see, even though this is an IRC archive, you have icons. Which brings me to the last thing, which is we also hold events which work in person because we really believe in the human value of connection. Indie Web Camp Berlin 2 is coming up, November 23rd and 24th. Tickets are complimentary. If you're in Europe, we encourage you to come to that. If you're in the States, we encourage you to come to Indie Web Camp San Francisco, December 7th and 8th. So, any questions?
I don't think we've done questions. Questions afterwards? Fine, I'm dead. Let's wait to back up. Just approximately, that'll do. Hi, everyone. Okay, so this will be a quick one because it was a last-minute decision to do it. So I think in the future we're going to need more identities. And so my theory is that passwords are essentially a blocker to us getting to this future. You know, in our brain, we're limited to how many we can remember. And so I've come here because I'm interested in almost any technology that allows us to use an alternative method. And I wanted to basically give a shout out to, so I've set up forgetpasswords.com. It's a forum where I've started discussing these issues, looking for almost anything, any solution in that area. Some of the sort of social benefits of being able to have multiple identities. And so check it out if that is also interesting to you.
All right, so this will be a little bit more on the philosophical end. I'm going to really quickly ask all of our speakers to close your eyes. Okay? Everybody else, on the count of 3, how many fingers am I holding up? 3, 2, 1. 5. All right, speakers, you can open your eyes. How many fingers was I holding up?
3.
So smart. All right, so basically information is always in form. You're hearing my voice right now because there's sound waves propagating through the room, and that's the form of that information. You're able to hear it, however, because you have an eardrum that's flexing when those sound wave hits it. Your body is literally changing shape. You are being transformed. We're able to experience information only when we experience transformation. Kind of crazy, right? Well, you were able to experience the information, the light coming off of my fingers, even though they weren't. But you did something useful for them. You were able to transform that information from the form of light into the form of sound, which they did have access to, because though their eyes were closed, their ears were not. Right? So this is kind of an interesting thing. Unfortunately, we're not able to be responsive or receptive to all forms of information. It takes effort to build up a capacity to receive something. So I'm good with sound. I'm really bad with radio waves. how do living systems, how do natural systems deal with this? Well, they delegate to others, right? Just like happened here, we delegated the transformation of information. They delegated to you that transformation. We see that in the natural world all the time. Cows delegating to grass the useful transformation of carbon dioxide and water into glucose. Okay? So there's agents that are bridging. This is kind of the difference between a network and an ecosystem. We often talk about centralized, decentralized, distributed networks, but in those networks, if you're not actually changing the form, it doesn't, you can get something there, but there's something richer that happens when agents are able to receive information in one form and transform it into another. That's actually the key to an ecosystem. And so what I'm really wanting to talk about today is that the key that difference plays in generating value or enabling us to benefit from interacting with one another. How does a beehive explore territory? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that through this concept of holographic storage. Holographic is this idea that we perceive of everything that's before us, but only the parts that we're able to, only from our own perspective. In other words, we're scarred by our own experiences, right? If we're scarred only by the things that we experience, then we don't have the information that everybody else did. But we can interact with them and they can share information with us and we get better for it. So beehive, you have bees going off in a whole bunch of different directions, and one wanders off this way and it doesn't find any pollen. And it comes back to the hive all tired, but it sees another bee do a little dance, and that indicates, oh, that bee had gone this way and found pollen. It brought back useful information. It noticed, hey, I found something. It came back. It left a signal. This new bee goes, oh, maybe I should go look over there. It goes over there and explores in that territory, and when it comes back, yeah, I found pollen too, and does a little dance, and the next bee is able to learn from that. The cost that first bee bore when it went and failed was small. That bee's effort got lost. But when we find something valuable, that's able to be passed on, and if the next party finds it valuable, they can pass it on as well. The key thing here is that in distributed systems, or systems with holographic storage, we get the most learning for the least cost. The problem, that the whole point that I want to make here is this. Often with centralization, we think that the issue is corruption or power imbalances or something like that. And I think it's actually this, that there's a huge learning disability that centralized systems have. They don't fail cheaply enough, so they're not able to explore broadly enough. They don't have the vitality. The problem with centralized systems is they actually reduce the aliveness of our systems. Thank you.
Okay, so we are about to start calling sessions, and our first session is at 12. Before we do that, I'm just super aware that we've just had a whole series of lightning talks by a bunch of men, so I'm going to give a lightning talk. Woo! If any other people who don't identify as men would like to do a quick talk, please come forward. So, really quickly, one of the things that I do is translate between technologists and non-technologists, often policy people, government people. That's the kind of area where I sit. And one of the things that I'm finding really interesting is, like, we've reached the point where everyone's like, oh man, Facebook, you know, something's got to be done. Something has got to be done. Facebook is evil. You know, did you see, like, Mark Zuckerberg being questioned about when he found out about Cambridge Analytica by the awesome AOC, whose exact name I don't remember, but her Twitter name is AOC. And it's really amazing. And suddenly we've got people saying, let's break up big tech. We've got to do something. You know, there is a desire to regulate, but actually what people are proposing isn't very innovative, isn't very interesting. I mean, just fine, if Facebook loses Instagram and WhatsApp, that's not actually going to protect people's privacy. That's not actually going to change the fact that a fifth of the entire world's population, 1.6 billion people, log in daily into a platform that's whole business model is trying to keep you hooked and, you know, like selling your data for advertising and selling your attention. That's kind of terrible. And so one of the things that I've been talking to a lot of people about and thinking about is how can we explain to regulators and policy people that there's more that we can do. We can start looking at interoperability, breaking big tech open. So maybe some of you guys have seen, I wrote about this a couple of weeks back, and it's actually getting a huge amount of interest from policy people. So I think we need to start talking about some of these standards, whether it's decentralized identity, ActivityPub, other things. How can we actually make Facebook use these standards, or at the very least open up their APIs to make it possible to break their monopoly and ensure that when people use alternatives, whether it's Scuttlebutt or Matrix or something else, they don't lose their social network and their contacts, and they can still be invited to events or invite people to events and essentially maintain that social graph and interoperability. So that's something that I'm really, really interested in, especially taking to a more sort of political campaign level. There's quite a few organizations that are actually really excited about it. And if anyone else or any other organizations institutionally want to support this effort, then please come talk to me. My name is Ira. Thank you.
Okay, folks. Okay, folks, so what we're going to do now is turn ourselves back into a circle. I'm not going to give you any more instruction than that. You know what a circle looks like. You know what it was like before. If you get back into a circle, then we will do some more organisation about how we're going to do the rest of the day, and then we can relax into the day. Well, big thank you to Heaven for keeping time and keeping everybody on 15 minutes of your preparation.
There you go. You just put that in your pocket or belt loop or wherever, and then this can just clip onto your shirt.
Is that okay? Did you change that away? Okay.
Put like, say, 3 chairs each or something for now. We can pull them toward around.
Okay. I don't just say the stream on the stream. That's what I'm done. So recapping what Tantek said, let's go through that. Stop me at any point if you want to expand on something, or how it applies to your site. So Tantek showed his own website off. This is his website, but he's posted his talk on this after he said it, not while he said it. That would have been really scary. He's posted on his own site here, using his own tool. Was that first meetup?
You want me to show the link?
Okay. He also posts replies to tweets from his own site, which go out to Twitter. So that's the same thing. If you click out to Twitter, hang on, there's a reply on Twitter. Did you get that? Or? Yeah. So basically, he's posting on his own site first and sharing it out to the external sites separately, so that you're treating them as a backup and a publication method that may fail. You've already got your first copy of the post. Yeah. Oh. And this is the link back to the post on his site. It's got a short link. Is that a short link? No, it's not a short link. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought you had a different short link, but anyway, he's got a short link back to the post on his site, so that he can say, here's where the site itself is. Here's where the origin of this post is. We don't always do that, because if the post is short enough to be a tweet anyway, giving them a link that shows you the same thing can be a bit weird. But if it's a longer post with structure to it, or the tweet is just the first 200 characters of it, it's nice to have a link back to the site. You want to pop back? Ooh.
That was the next thing.
What was the next thing? Oh. Yeah. He posts photos on his own site, and again sends a copy to Twitter. So there's the photos posted on his site, and there's the Twitter version. And go back. Where we are now. He's also been posting events. So we have a Homebrew Website Club every other week in lots of cities around the world. If you want to start one, talk to us. We'll talk into how to do it. It's basically, it's basically it's like the Homebrew Computing Club used to be. So you get together, you talk about what you've been working on that week in a circle like this, and then you break into conversations about things that sound interesting in that. So it's sort of a show and tell, and then a conversation. So fairly low pressure, lasts an hour and a half. We normally do them sort of straight after work in a place where people work and gather in workplaces like that. So we've got them in San Francisco, London, Brighton, Berlin. Don't know, just before I forget. There's a long list, and they come and go as well, depending, as we sometimes put one on if we're in town or things like that. But the idea is it's trying to create a regular meeting space for people in the real world in between the times we're talking online. But yeah, so he's posting an event here. Oh, he's got an add to calendar button, which generates the ICS file that you can then put into Google or Apple Calendar or whatever. You don't do replies though, do you?
Just RSVPs.
You support RSVPs. Do you show them?
Anyone's RSVP. This is pretty freshly posted. So
Okay.
If they were, they'd be down here.
I could post an RSVP, but
Yeah.
Question. Does that RSVP that people send to you, they're sending it through Westminster, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Does that data go back into the ICS file as attendees?
It could do, but that's not at the moment.
Actually, I don't know. No, not currently. Not currently, because I'm displaying the RSVPs in an iframe here, and not like applying the content. But that is an excellent suggestion.
No, because I'm having problems with the attendees inside ICS too.
Yeah.
For gatherings.
ICS is so finicky.
Yeah, like I wrote it from scratch many times, but like the calendar apps I'm using are not showing the attendees, even though my ICSs are validating everywhere.
So, looking at identity from different lenses, this is technology lens. So, I think what you're saying is sort of identity or
Noted.
Okay.
I hope you solve it, then I can copy it.
Okay. Well, what I'm doing is I'm actually using a service. So this is the tweet copy of it. So I try to post a copy of everything to Twitter, just because a lot of people follow there, right? But in Twitter, you don't have as much space, so this is the mini version, right? But add to calendar, it's something everyone does, and so I don't want to make people have to come to my site. If they say, "Oh yeah, I know what this is, I want to go," one click add to calendar. This is using a service called H2BX. So if you have an HTML page that has your event marked up an H event, it converts it to ICS for you. So all that logic, all that difficult programming is in the service to deal with ICS. All you have to do is publish an HTML page, which is so much easier.
I pulled an all-night duplicating that function.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's ICS is a bit of a messy format, and it's a little varies between systems as well. So you've got to do some work to try and make things that they're all happy with. Yeah.
Is the code that powers H2BX open? Can anyone
100%.
Yeah.
It's open source, yeah. It's on GitHub.
Is it still XSLT or is it?
The transforms.
It's open source but hard to edit, is what I was saying. Yeah.
I used to work with that with XSLT for a publisher. I still have nightmares.
Okay, let's work on it together.
Okay, so back here, but go to the event again.
Okay.
And reload.
Did you post an RSVP?
I posted an RSVP. Oh. I RSVP no, because I'm not going to San Francisco, but
There you go, it works.
it works. So click on that. We may as well show the whole thing.
Okay. Okay.
I assume that links through, right? Yeah.
I think this goes to your.
Oh, it goes to me rather than the post?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably have to. Okay, I'll trust your scripts, Kevin.
Okay.
No, this should be an HTML menu.
Sorry. So I replied to the Tentex post. No, but I do miss it.
And all I got was the no.
Yeah.
Because I'm not showing comments yet.
Yeah. But he rendered it as an X. So the way this works, we can. If you interested, do you want to dig into it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't inspect that one because that's a nice my one because it's quite small. So RCP is probably a good example as a microformats markup thing. Yeah. So if we view source on this, or maybe just inspect that bit because the source is a bit scrappy.
Is this close?
Are we there yet?
This is all deep in your CMS, right?
Yes. Okay. Okay. So.
Which one are you looking for?
I'm trying to find the H entry. Where's the H entry?
Right here.
Okay. So this is marked up with microformats. There's a bunch of markup nonsense in here that's designed for display. But the microformats defines certain prefixes and suffixes for classes to describe structured data. So we have H entry, which is a post. We have an author, P author. And then it has an H card, which means there's structure in here, which is the author icon. So it's my link, which is T means take the data of the element, so you can get the structured data out. So those, I think that's all the types. So we've done a simple set of types as prefixes, and then the field name as a suffix, and that way you can create a nested structured object that you can pass back and forth to JSON. There's some slight JSON infelicities in that because you can put arbitrary numbers of these in, everything ends up inside a list, so we end up with lots of brackets and nested square brackets of things, because potentially there could be lots of photos. There were 2 copies of the URL that were marked as URL and so on. But that was something we decided to do early on, rather than saying it could be single or it could be multiple. We just made them always multiple so that you can always dereference them.
I have many problems like that.
Yeah.
Oh, this is single, and now we need to put more data in it.
Yeah. So, but also, we have no control for
That problem in the first version microformats?
Yeah.
Make everything plural.
Yeah.
Like that's just like if you try to do cardinality in your format, you're almost always going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
That's the lesson we learned.
People have.
vCard got it wrong.
Yeah.
Between vCard 3 and 4.
Yes, it learned the idea that people have more than one name. That was a change between vCard 3 and 4. Anyway, sorry. So pop the stack a bit. We'll go back to Tentex thread, I think, unless there's more questions about that.
This is a good intro. If you want to read more.
Yeah. So microformats.io will help you understand microformats. It's a standards organization that we set up 2004. 2005. Yeah, 2005.
And it's supported all kinds of like Mastodon, Microsoft.
Yeah.
Lots of folks support it.
I came here, and 50% of my reason to be here is to question you guys.
Okay. We can.
Because I'm really interested in this, and I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to monopolize things.
All right, why don't we go to the next subject then?
Okay, we'll go to the next subject rather than keep going in. We'll pop back out again and get back to that because. And yeah, if anyone else wants to ask us things at any level of this, please do. Okay, where have we got to? Calendar. Somebody was talking about decentralized Git and storing Git issues in Git, which sounds reasonable. Tantex's version of that is he stores his issues on his own site and then shares them into GitHub. So, because GitHub has the same problem, it's a essentially own thing. I mean, so by Microsoft now, they've done a reasonable job of maintaining commons, so we're probably okay. But yeah, it's still a bit, it still could go away. They've deleted things before. So here he's written, this is Tentec's day job is web standards. So he's writing about the consolidation of different kinds of web app manifests and things like that. He wrote it on his site first, gathering stuff together. It's like, if you want to dig into standard stuff, he's a good blog to read. But you wrote it here, and then you fed it into, where's it gone? Where's the link? GitHub. Yeah, fed it into GitHub, yeah. So there's the same post in GitHub. Do you munge it into Markdown or just post the HTML?
I use Bridgie, and it munges the Markdown for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so all the links come across.
Oh, you're using Aaron's original code. That's very cool.
Like, if you look at those links, it's like everything is still linked.
Right.
Plus, this part says
Cool. So do we want to talk about Bridgie or?
Yes.
Okay. So we've talked earlier about sharing posts out to Twitter as well. Now you can just do that by hand, copy and paste them. You can write your own tools to do that, like the one I was using to post tweets earlier on. But there's a site called Bridgie that's maintained by one of our community, Ryan, who's put a lot of time and effort into this. And basically, he's doing the work of dealing with all these silos for you. So you send it in micro formats and web mentions. He translates it into stuff that appears on those sites. And then he will turn the comments there back into mentions that go on the other post. Does that work for your GitHub ones, or?
Yeah,
Yeah. So, but basically, he's put it for these. He's deleted Facebook from it because Facebook have been less cooperative recently. Instagram's looking shaky for similar reasons. They're throttling access a lot. But broadly, he uses their public APIs or scraping or whatever he can do to deal with it. This is also, you can add a web mention endpoint to particular blogging silos as well, which is quite a neat trick. And basically, you sign into your account on whatever this thing is, and then it knows who you are, and it looks at your post there. And then when you create a post, you put a special link in that says send this to this one, and it sends it out to that one. And then if it monitors the silos, so if someone replies there, it will make a web mention back to you. So we can probably, it might be easier to do that with a tweet than a GitHub one, maybe, but. So yeah, sorry. So web mention was the spec I'll be talking about here. It's a very simple way to say, I have linked to you. It has two parameters, source and target. It says source is my site, target is your site, I have linked to you. And you create an endpoint on your site that's discoverable in the headers that is the web mention endpoint, and I post to that like a web form. So with question mark equal stuff after it. Yeah. And similarly, Bridgie's one example of this. We've got a bunch of other tools for both receiving and sending web mentions that you can dig out as well. There, okay, yeah. So spec.indieweg.org is where we keep the standards listings, the stuff we worked on. We talked about web mention. We haven't talked about micro formats in this because that's on a separate site mainly, but these are the ones there. So, do you want to go through these or not? There's a bunch of different ones. What we'll do is we'll do them in context when they make sense. So, you want to go back to your post again? Or if you want to ask about them, do it, yeah. Keep going. One more. I want to go back to the tweet one that has a reply, if we can find the tweet one that has a reply. Do you show the replies or not? Oh, you don't show the replies. Okay, never mind then. Let's not do that. Okay. We can show that later with my site or something. Where are we? So that was the web mention link, and the spec in the web was the list of specs. Okay. We talked about marking up your site with microformats, and we showed you some of the insides of that. Intowebify Me is a starting point for that. So it's basically a series of things you add to your site, and it has tests for them where it will say, did you get that right or not? So if you put in my site, known.kevinmarks.com. Oh, I was going to do the known one, but you can do kevinmarks.com. That'll work too. So first of all, talk about rel-me's as well. This is my site. It connects to a bunch of other sites that have a certain string in common. This is using the idea of rel equals me. So when you make a link, you can put rels on the link that says what the link means. It's defining the relationship between the link. And rel equals me is one that we defined a while back that says that is also me. That page represents the same person or entity as this page does. So on my site, kevinmarks.com, I link out to Gmail and Known and my blog and Flickr, Twitter, Google+, RIP, I should delete that one. Or put your link to archive, maybe.
I haven't seen that in a while.
GitHub, Huffduffer, Twitter, no, I think that's died as well. That's an old new social. That's a Mastodon instance, that's another Mastodon instance. And I said, there's a DAT URL for the other decentralized people as well. So that's a list of links on my site that link out to that. So that's basically saying these are me as well. Now to verify, you can just assert that, which is a bit tricky, but you can verify that by having a link back. So if we go through to GitHub, say, if you look on the link here, inspect that. Okay. That has rel equals me on it as well. It's got no follow me, which is a bit weird, but it links back to me. So because both sites are saying rel me in both directions, that's verification that it is the same person. Some sites put these me's on by default. GitHub does it. Twitter does it, but only on the intent pages, which is kind of a pain. WordPress can do it. There's ways of doing it. And we have part of what the Bridges stuff sets up for the silos is me links that do that for you as well. So this is a way of saying this is the same person in both places. We also have ways of using that as a way to log in, which we could go into, but there's basically the idea of rel me auth that says I will log in with my own domain name, but we will use my GitHub login because GitHub actually has authorization and my site doesn't. So I'm saying I'm happy to use their auth to represent that this is my site. But please use my site as the primary definition of me rather than GitHub. So that's a model that's a sort of microformats model we've had for a long time. The underlying standard for this is called XFN, XHTML Friends Network. There's lots of different definitions of rel values for different kinds of relationships. There's friend and met and those kinds of things. But the me is the one we use most because identity consolidation is hard. And you want a lot of different sets of identities that you can connect together. That's a very valuable thing. Okay, because it means if one of them dies, I haven't lost everything. When my Google Plus went, Google Plus, okay, Google Plus used to be Google Profiles, which I helped build 10 years ago, 12 years ago, which had all this rel-me stuff built in, and that was actually a very good identity consolidation thing. But we'd have to go to archive.org to see it. We could do that later, maybe. Okay, so the next thing, that's checking the rel-me's. The next thing is you look for the H card. This is the expression of your authorship, your persona. Let's see what it might look like. Yeah, it's got a photo, it's got my name, it's got the URL, it's got an email. It's telling me I should add a note, p-note to it, which I could do. That you can actually put more stuff in. You can put, who you've worked for and lots of other URLs, things like that. Tantek's got a richer one if you look at his. But the basic idea is you create this as a representation of you, and if other sites want to show you as a replier or something, they can fetch this, get your photo and your name and your URL.
And that data, you're making it usually live on the front page of your website.
You can, yes, yeah. There's a thing called the authorship algorithm that lets you look for it in other places. But yeah, but you can also put it on each individual post.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
there's a web mention that's linking deep into the site.
Yeah. So you saw on the post I had a P author H card that says this post was written by this person. Yeah. Check the post. Okay. Do you want to do my post or your post? Oh, that's fine.
Like this?
Yep. Okay. So it's found that P author H card, Kevin Marks, It's a different URL because it's the profile URL on that side. In reply to, which is the in reply to field. Content, this is the e-content, no, but I do miss it. Publish date, URL. And it's suggesting things I could add to this. I could link to the external copy, so like Tantex posts have that syndicated thing to say, here's the Twitter copy, here's the GitHub copy, or whatever. And you can put categories in, hashtags or whatever you want. The content thing I'm using, I type hash and it put it in, it auto links them as well. I think yours does too, right? So if we parse your GitHub one, we'll get a bunch more structure here. Should we want to try that? Is that one? No. Yeah. So yeah, so we've got the name, the author, in reply to the content. It's not showing as HTML actually, which is kind of a shame. It's URL and the syndicated copy. Oh, we didn't find your hashtags. That's weird. Ah, okay. We've got a bug in this. Yeah, you should have found them. Oh, you had W3 tagger things with hashes. Oh, you didn't put them as categories. You didn't. Okay.
Yeah, maybe. This one. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So you get the idea. We've been doing this a while. We've got most of the common things you want to use in posts. We have debates about new ones every now and then, but we've got like audio, video, photos, some discussion about multi-photos and slideshows, things like that. But most of the kinds of posts you can do, we can do with this. And worst case, if we can stick HTML in, then you can do anything. Okay, back up to where were we? We're still in Webify. Is there one more? Or is that enough? That's all we need for Webify, isn't it? Oh yeah, so the web mention thing. So this will test sending web mentions from your site. So if you marked it up, you've marked up the links to other sites, it will send a web mention for you, so you don't have to have that built in your CMS. And we've got 3 or 4 tools that will do that as well. And then, do we need all this reply context? That's the in reply to stuff. And then there's more discussion about how to set up web mentions for your site. And there's 3 or 4 services that will do it, where you basically just put something ahead that says, here's my web mention URL, and sign up for it, and it will receive them. Some of them need sign up, some of them don't.
That's exactly what I'm interested in, because I'm building lots of static generators.
Yes.
And feels very dynamic, and I'm like, how can I build a static generator that can receive web mentions?
Oh, well, I can show you some of those. Well, kevinmarks.com is. So you go to kevinmarks.com. So this is a static site.
Okay.
If you look at the head of it,
Probably need to enable this one, right?
you need to trust it for the JavaScript to come in. Yes. If you view source and look at the head, we have rel equals web mention here, and that links out to webmention.herokuapp.com, which is a web mention service that's built by Vox Pelli, who's one of our community people. So you can go there and sign up for that, or you can fork it and deploy it yourself on Heroku. And then somewhere in here, down the bottom, there's some JavaScript that injects them with this link from his side. So if we go back and scroll to the bottom, yeah. So there's the script that basically calls this site, fetches that stuff, and embeds it in. So he's storing the web mentions in a database on his side, generates some HTML, which I'm injecting into the page. And then, so if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, because this is my manually edited homepage, so I don't actually have pagination. You will see. So you can see some web mentions here. So these are likes. They've got a p like of in the link to me. So that's a like. That's a p repost of, which is a repost. A lot of these will actually be bridgy ones that came from Twitter. So people will have linked to me from Twitter and responded to that. And then I've got some stuff that someone responded to my whole page and talked about that there. There's another reply here. Oh, that's an at reply to my Twitter handle, which has been copied over here. So I probably need to moderate that out. because he's having a row with me about Brexit, which is probably not something I want on my website, but there we go. And because the URL, you can target the top level, so Bridgie will map at Kevin Marks on Twitter to a web mention to kevinmarks.com, so it'll come through that way. And it's up to you how you display them. This is my weird CSS to put stars and recycle things on them instead of hearts and whatevers. Oh. You talk about the thing I was pointing at. Anyway, you get the basic idea. So we have services that will receive web mentions and that will give you something you can inject into your site. So there's webmention.herokuapp.com I mentioned. There's webmention.io that does that, and it will generate some structured JavaScript for you to do that. And there's mention.tech, which is one I made that basically does the same thing, but essentially web mentions. It's fairly ugly. And there's some other scripts and tools that will take the received web mentions and format them for your site and do them in prettier ways. So it's under your control, but it's there. Oh, fill in your names here.
All right, we'll do that later.
We'll do that later. Okay, where are we?
We're at chat. I think that was the last.
That was the next one, yeah, okay. Okay, so chat.indieweb.org is our IndieWeb chat room. Now, being IndieWeb, it uses a bunch of IndieWeb standards as well. So each of these individual things are marked up as posts, the links you link of, and so on. So if you view source on that, or put it into the IndieWebify, you'll see it. Yeah, so Template posting in the IRC, here's the content, there's the URL, there's the time, and there's the URL. So we use our own stuff to build our own things, which is a good principle. So this is the web version. There's some other clever bridging going on here that bridges out to IRC, Matrix, and Slack. And Discourse as well. Oh, we need to add a link for that, yeah. So that's two-way bridging. It's done with a variety of different things. Some is some special stuff that Aaron built with a bot, which goes to Slack, because that's a proprietary API. The Matrix and IRC stuff is a bit more standard.
And that's what Andre suggested.
Yeah. That was the suggestion that we put it into the channel. Now it's got a permalink. We can find it again. We could send it web mentions if we want.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the chat. But if you've got other questions, go to chat.indieweb.org. Ask them there. There are people there round the clock mainly, because it gets a bit quiet when both Europe and America are asleep, but there are a few people in Asia and Australia as well. So there's usually someone there. And there's sub-channels for more specialized things. So there's the main IndieWeb one. There's a dev one, which is for more codey questions. Meta, it gathers links. Well, actually, Meta's interesting. So Meta gathers links from elsewhere and puts them in. So there's keyword searches on Twitter for IndieWeb and things like that. And other places as well. So this is basically our sensor network on the rest of the world.
And the newsletter.
Oh yeah, and then we have a weekly newsletter that is compiled from the chat and the wiki. We didn't really mention the wiki yet, did we? But anyway, we'll get to that. So this gathers up all the different events and things like that. We'll try and get a photo here and post that so that we can show up as well. And you can sign up for the newsletter and you'll get to know upcoming events, or you can just go and look at the wiki. And it shows wiki edits and things as well.
This was a busy week.
Yeah, so we can talk about the wiki a bit. So the indieweb.org is primarily a wiki, and we use that as an information repository. It's good. Yeah. So the front page talks about IndieWeb, but basically you can add pages to talk about things. Other people edit them and add links to it as well. So we've got the high-level stuff. Yeah. Using the Realme stuff we were talking about earlier. Yeah. Using the Realme stuff we used earlier, you signed to the wiki. And there's if you want to learn more about this, read there. There's some subtleties about the wiki. You can actually edit the wiki from the chat. So if someone says, what is thing, it'll look on the wiki, and if there's a page, it'll show you the summary. So if you say, what is web mention, it will say, web mention is a way for one site to link to another site. Here's the link to the description, click through to the wiki page, then a link to the spec, and so on. If you say, what is scuttlebutt, and we haven't defined it yet, you can then say scuttlebutt is short description, and you've created a wiki page. And there's another macros for adding links to a page. You can do name of page, two less thans, link and text, and it'll append it to the page. So there's sort of classic wiki gardening, but there's a lot of shortcut stuff that integrates it with the chat, which is it's a toolkit we put up over the years as a way of bringing the different strands of the community together. But what it means is, if you go to the chat, there'll be someone in there all the time. It's it goes up to 100 and something, goes down to about 10, it varies, but this is where we hang out, yeah. And we talked about Homebrew Website Club. Indie web camps are bigger. It's like this kind of event, but 2 days, usually over a weekend. The first day is very much this format of open space. The second day is let's build something about what we talked about yesterday with demos at the end. So we sort of open with here's our websites, here's what we've made. Open space. Day 2, build things, talk about the things you built. And we'll be doing those for...
The next one in Europe is in Berlin, you said?
Yes, there's one in Berlin.
When is it?
So 23rd of November in Berlin. And there's one in... Old WordCamp. Okay. Did you say there was an SF one as well?
I thought I'd saved it. Maybe it's unsaved somewhere.
Okay.
All right.
And again, using our own stuff, eating our own cooking. These events on the wiki are marked up with the H-event stuff, and the other stuff parses that out. So those structured pages you saw elsewhere are parsing that other page, creating an event list, putting them into the newsletter, and so on. So it's taking a bunch of the structured data we've got and then using it to spread that around. And with some of the events we do RSVPs as well. What we found is that for the Homebrew Website Clubs will take indie RSVPs. You can also RSVP on the wiki. Oh, yeah. Yep. H event, properties, and so on. Start time, end time. There's more properties in events than there are in other things. And then these are people who are attending. So these are they've come back as children. H card. They're not actually marked up as replies.
Yeah, I could mark them as attendees.
Yeah, they're marked up as attendees, right? Because you don't mark them up as RSVPs on the site that they've RSVP'd to, because the RSVP is somewhere else. We also let people do it other ways as well, because not everyone who comes to Indie Web thing has a site set up to do this, so we'll let you do it on the wiki, or we'll do your sign-up tools and things as well to get to numbers. But we've done enough of these now. We've got if you want to do one, we'll tell you how to do it. Book a space, get 2 people to work on it. Here's a bunch of things you need. Here's where you get stickers and T-shirts, and it's the Barcamp model, remapped a bit to fit this thing. Yeah, yes, please.
This is the one in Berlin.
Go ahead. It's a bit too close to Thanksgiving, isn't it?
It's the weekend before.
It's the weekend before.
So that one's going to allow remote?
We often do remote, yeah.
Okay.
If we can, if the space will allow it.
Yeah.
We've got some community members who bring gear, like our friend here, to send it out to the web, and we'll often do some kind of chat back in. We've used 3 or 4 different ones, but there's lots of options these days, which is good. And there's also the chat channels will be taken over with it for that weekend as well. So you can dip it in and out that way and get a summary, or go and read what people have said about it. So keep it the web. Oh yeah, stickers. Did you? Well, do you want to go back to your post as a? your outline again. This is good. I think is that everything.
That's all I have.
That's it. Okay. So, does that help? Is there stuff you want to ask us about?
It's a much bigger thing than I realized. Like, I thought it was just like, set up a website. But you guys have made this much subtler. It's very interesting.
Well, the point is, it's designed to be progressive.
Yeah.
IndieWebify is quite good at that. It says, okay, start with a website. Okay, where's your URL? Okay, link to your other places from that. And that will give you the space to do more things. Each of these things is incremental. It's not a monolith. You don't have to do all these things.
Yeah.
You may not want to host events on your site. There's no reason to. But if you're organising events, that could be nice. So part of the point is all these are defined as independent pieces. There are some other pieces that we didn't talk about. Do you want to go back to the specs? We can go through those as well. Because we have, so I mentioned the microformat stuff for structure, and web mentioned for communicating between sites so that you can use that structure to interact with each other. We've also got, let's see, we've got micropub, which is a spec for letting you post to your site. So that uses the roll.me auth to log you in to prove that it is your site. And then we have another endpoint, which is basically just a form post endpoint that you can just post to, and then you make it appear on your site. How you do that is up to you. But that's the system we've set up for clients and servers. So if I use a third-party site for that, I can then post to my own site. And then if my site's set up right, that can send it out to Twitter and call all these other tools and so on. Good stuff back in.
I'm an NASA fan as well.
Yeah, I saw the stickers. I thought those are great.
So do you want to look at micro? Do you want to go back to specs?
Sure. Like spec stuff?
Yeah.
So I will do this hack of typing the URL into...
so that you can read it.
Okay. So I mentioned web mentioned, which is probably the easiest one to add, because you basically just have a header and user service, and you get quite a lot from that. Micropub, I was just talking about, and these are W3C specs that we did with the Social Web Working Group. We built the microperformance community work, tested them, then a bunch of us, Tantek, me, and Aaron, and the others were there. Micropub.
This was over 2 years ago. There's dozens of clients and servers.
Yeah.
It's like massive.
Micropub Rocks is a test suite for that. So if you want to build micropub stuff, we've got things that work back and forth between that. The same for web mention. If you want to build web mention, there's a test suite. There's a bunch of tools. There's some tricky stuff because if you're used to receiving web mention, incorporating stuff into your site, you've got to be careful about escaping scripts and stuff like that. So we've got some test cases that will send you bad ones, so you can go scrap. There's some nuances about web mention, which is you can update a remote post and then we'll send the web mention again. So you want to make sure you replace rather than adding, so you don't get 25 copies of the same thing if I'm editing it. And there's a way to delete it as well, where you delete the post and then send a web mention to your dead link that should return 410, and then it knows to delete it. So there's a bunch of nuance in that. Why are you in CRUD?
These are all done. This is web mention.
Oh, this is web mention. Okay.
So how to create, read, update.
Yes. So there's a mod. It's basically we're synchronizing stuff in 2 points. So you've got to have ways of doing that stuff. But we've done the work and defined how to do it. We've got use cases, examples. We've got code in many cases. So it's not one of those specs where you think, oh, that would be nice to implement. Oh, how do I do this? It's here's a bunch of code in language you're probably using or services, and here's a test suite as well. Because we built it first incrementally and then wrote the specs, or wrote the specs on the wiki and then formalized the specs. Okay, back up to specs. So WebSub.
Let's do IndieAuth. We have 5 minutes left.
Okay, let's do IndieAuth.
Prior time.
So IndieAuth is harder to explain, but yeah. IndieAuth is the same idea of I link to the other sites. That means I can delegate authorization to those sites. So my primary identity is my URL, one of my URLs. I pick that URL, and that will be identified as that. And then you use these external links to define it. There's IndieAuth Rocks. Oh.
There we go.
Yeah, IndieAuthNet.
That's it.
It's a spec. It's a W3C spec as well.
Can you show me the flow of logging in into one of those sites?
Sure. Do you want to do that, Tante? Use. What do you want to use? Quill? No, you can't use Quill, can you? Because you don't have Microg.
Well, let's do.
You can just open a private window and log back to your site.
Let's try this.
Yeah, that also works.
Hopefully.
Yep. Yeah. When was the last time you logged up?
I don't remember. You know what? Let me show you failure first. I saw.
Oh, if you want failure, you can try my site because
So
I have
I'm not
DHCOD
Tira.
but no ALF.
Right?
Okay.
I'm not Tira, but she's got a button there. So I click that. Let's see what happens.
So basically saying, nope, you can't impersonate people. So if you go,
That's good. It's not my site.
that's true actually. Yes, this is a good point. Always test a negative case first.
Let's see if it works when it's mine.
Yeah, and if it works, this is happening visibly in the background. It's going over to GitHub, fetching the thing, seeing that, and then you're back in there.
Do I have?
So basically, all IndieAuth is doing is going to the website, finding the provider, and then it's just the OAuth cycle.
Well, there's a bit more to it. You can implement it yourself as well, but yeah, you can do the auth directly on your own site, and there's examples of how to do that. But you can also delegate it to an external system.
Code I didn't wrote has less bugs, so I'd rather delegate.
Yeah, well, it's a trade-off, but then you can't always fix the bugs. But yeah, so Indie login.
There you go.
Yeah, so you can use Indie login, and that will delegate to more places. So it will delegate to Twitter, GitHub, emails, PGP keys, and it can also potentially delegate to another Indie website as well. So my known site does that implement IndieAuth, so I could delegate kevinmarks.com to my known site and log in that way.
Good question about that. I see that there is a PHP key option there. If I wanted to add a different kind of key system there, for example, the scuttlebutt one, where should I go to find more information?
Here.
Yeah, Indie login. Indie login is an open source implementation of IndieAuth.
You can make your own IndieAuth.
Oh, yes, you should definitely read this article. This is what you want. Aaron's spent a lot of time on OAuth, and if you want to understand things, he'll explain it to you. Oh yeah, Aperture's a good one as well. What's that?
You can use, I think Keybase gives you, you can link to your key, right? Then just do this. Link to your key.
Yeah.
But you can provide an IndieAuth provider that does any new authentication system.
Yeah.
SSP or whatever.
Yeah, no, you can. I mean, the point about IndieAuth is it just says where to find your authorizer and what it returns,
So you on your website
and the redirection flow.
authorize me using this authenticator.
Yeah. So you can plug your own stuff in, or you can delegate it all to someone else, like a Richmond.
This way, since I already have an add-on in the browser, and the add-on knows the scuttlebutt keys, I could log into the site from injecting some stuff from the add-on.
Yes, you could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you do clients, I think, like we've got ways of doing that browser augmentation stuff that we could talk about, but that's.
So as an example, Indie Login supports the IndieAuth protocol. So you could do your own like SSP login.
Yeah, that's what
that supported the IndieAuth protocol. And
Yes.
Just like Indie Login will do a challenge response with the PGP key, you could do the challenge response with the,
Yeah.
the SSP key.
So so if you implement the IndieAuth spec, but on the back end it's SSB, and you prompt it that way and return that, then you can make that work, and then it will plug into the Indie login thing, and it should work for anyone else who wants indie-auth, because you'll have to do a binding between the SSB key and the URL some way on your own way. And that's
I'm using the same thing like rel.me,
Yeah.
and I have my hash.
Yeah.
There's no way to verify.
But the question we have verifying it back is ideally you want to verify it back. You don't want to allow impersonation. So you may need to
I need to
define a way to publish the link back in SSB. And I don't know how you do that. You'd link to a SSB post somehow. Yeah. Do you want to go back to specs again, or?
Sure.
WebSub? WebSub or microsub? Microsub is probably better to demo then. Have you got one set up? Or? Okay. So microsub is, all these names get a bit confusing. We've got lots of micros and subs and webs and whatever. Anyway, microsub is for subscribing to other people's feeds. It's a protocol that works between...
Pub is for posting.
Yeah, pub is for posting. So, yeah. So webpub is, I want to post stuff, I want my stuff to be published, and I don't want people having to poll me. So it used to be called PubSub Hubbub. It was originally defined around Adam's feeds. It works for web things as well. And you basically say, when you post, I will send it to this hub, and the hub will manage the subscribers for you and sends them copies. Or sends them links, and they fetch it. You can do it both ways. So broadly, that means you can do distributed stuff without polling. But it's a bit more work to set up, and you can always poll it if you want to. Microsub is a spec for readers. So if you've got something that is doing the polling for you or receiving the web subs, it's a protocol for presenting that between that server and your client, so we can write more than one client. So there's two tools for that. There's Aperture, which is a web sub and feed reading server-side thing, and there's Monocle, which is the microsub client thing. So have you got an Aperture, Dante? We just need to sign in. Yeah, okay. So, top right, sign in. So, it's using indie-auth said that it is this site. I think. So we find out if you've actually got it or not. So the way Aperture works is yeah. So now he's signed in. He can see the sources that he's added to here. So he's got an indie web channel that has Sunny's Edge, Rosemary, a Medium feed, and Ryan, not me. I've taken note of that. You probably want the known one.
Is it HTTPS?
No, the known one is HTTPS. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Sorry. Okay. So who wants to add that? You can click Find Feeds.
Good, we're demonstrating the full flow.
Yeah. So I've got 3 formats of feeds because it's a blog. I've got a microformats feed, which is what he wants because there's a good one, and there are RSS feeds. You may get microformats feeds from some sites that
217 entries.
You will sometimes see microformats feeds when you go to WordPress blog, but they may not be right, and you may get less than the RSS. It's a trade-off. So it's a work in progress. We've got to encourage people to get microformats. Okay, so now if we go to Monocle, so that's the server-side part.
Where do you want me to go?
Monocle. Oh, no, okay. And again, sign in, uses indie-auth.
The key thing is, these are all different services. I'm not creating new accounts.
Yeah, I like that.
Like, that's our assumption.
Okay, this may fail because I'm not sure you've got create.
Let's see what happens.
Oh, I think it will still work. It's just you won't be able to post. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got a bunch of channels. If you go to the IndieWeb channel, you'll see Rosemary's written a post, Ryan's written a post, Chris has written a post.
Would it be correct to say that it's like a feed reader that's not logged into RSS and Atom? Correct.
Yes, but it supports them too. Now, if he had the micropub stuff enabled, it would also have replies enabled at the bottom of the post as well.
Sorry? Are you aware that the food is ready? No.
Oh.
We can go downstairs.
Any last questions?
Yeah.
So, we've
Matthew.
Matthew.
Nichols. One of the things I appreciate about this is when I put mine up, I was feeling like, oh man, it's really plain. And you guys are just like, oh, it's simple. You know?
Yeah.
And
Plain is good.
yeah.
You can do it more than one way.
I'm probably going to go a little more designy than that.
Oh, absolutely.
But I love that you guys just put it up like, hey, here's our simple home on the web, and that's okay. That's awesome.
I have people saying to me, I think the CSS didn't load on your site. It's like, no. There's some CSS there, honest. You may notice they're in different typefaces. It just looks like it hasn't changed since 1995. Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Okay. Turn your mic back.
Oh, here. Can you put this onto the video? You just put this in your pocket and then clip that wherever you're comfortable with it.
Cool.
This is Penguin.
It is.
Yeah. We're going to talk about Matrix for about 20 minutes or half an hour or.
I was going to jump to your last thing, but it's all right if I just.
Of course it is.
Know what Matrix?
Sorry?
Does one need to know?
Oh, no. It's an intro. It's an intro. No, absolutely no knowledge necessary.
Nice.
We can modify depending on people have questions, all that good stuff. Right, where am I going to put this, I wonder? Can I put it somewhere where I can... All right. All right, this is it's quite loud, so I don't know how I'm going to project fully, but I'm just going to yell at you really, really loudly, and we'll see how this goes. Just check our man is good to go. Are we good to go? All right. So hello, I'm Neil. I work on the core team at Matrix. This is kind of going to be a sort of intro to Matrix. It's going to be a little bit about what we've built to date. What exists in the wild, and what we're going to do next. What's the next big thing that we're going to do? For questions, if you've got questions, just ask them as we go. It's a small group, so we can just do that. The folks over the side, you can't see on the cameras. There's some physical body games going on. It's going to be a little bit disorientating while that's happening, but I think it'll be done in 10 minutes. That's it. Shall we dive in? So, just before I do dive in, I know some of you are new to Matrix. Is that true of everyone, or I'm just trying to get a sense of just a little bit of knowledge? Okay, great. That's brilliant. So let's dive in then. So, what? That is not what I thought it was going to do. All right. Right, okay. Is this going to work? Yes, good. All right, so Matrix is an open network for secure, decentralized, real-time communication. So you can use this for interoperable chat, interoperable VoIP, you can use it for virtual reality, and basically anything where you want to just synchronize blobs of JSON around the internet in a decentralized, eventually consistent kind of manner. So something that's a really good use case for that is interoperable chat, and that's really what I'm going to be talking about mostly here. We have a mission statement, which is a bit more detail, and I'll just read it out. It's to create a global, decentralized, encrypted comms network that provides an open platform for real-time communication. And this is a bit abstract. I'm going to talk in a bit more concrete terms in just a moment. But while we're on this sort of high-level, more philosophical thing, let's just talk a little bit about we have a manifesto, and I just want to talk about those kind of values that underpin the project because it helps to sort of describe why the hell we get out of bed in the morning and do this stuff. So the first thing is we believe people should have full control over their communications. We don't want people to get locked into centralized silos. We just think that's kind of awful for something so personal. We think people should be able to converse securely and privately as a human right. And the UN actually, in their European Bill of Human Rights, does actually talk about communication, but it does not talk about private communication. And we think that's really sad. And then the final thing, we think that communication should be free and open, it should be unencumbered, and it should be access to a standard network. All right, so that's quite hard, I think, to really get involved with. Let's think about something a little bit more practical. If you think about email, start with email. If I want to send an email to someone, I don't care if they're on Gmail or ProtonMail or Yahoo Mail, I can just send to them, and I can use a particular service provider, I can probably use whatever client I want to use, and I can hit send and it can happen. And I simply don't care who I'm sending it to and why, because it's an open standard and everyone implements the same standard. If I don't like my provider because they go evil or I just don't like them one day, I can move and I can migrate and my data is portable. I have to change my email address on my metadata or wanted to sort of weaken the encryption of that service or whatever, some reason I didn't like it, I cannot leave. And for a user, that's really, really, really bad news. And I think that is bad. So this is one of the reasons why Matrix exists. It tries to interoperate across lots and lots of other different protocols. It tries to create this open standard that others could also implement if they wish to. And that's basically what we've tried to build out over the past few years. So pictorially, if you imagine this, and there's a whole bunch of communication networks that you've got right here, Matrix kind of sits in the middle and interoperates between them. This whole idea we call bridging. It's not the main focus of what we're doing, but it is a very important aspect of Matrix, and it's very important philosophically of what we're trying to achieve. It's worth pointing out, though, if you're on Slack and you want to talk to your friend on Telegram, you're always limited to the lowest common denominator of the protocols involved. So if you're on Slack, this is not going to be an end-to-end encrypted chat because Slack can't do that. And so it's always important to remember that when you're thinking about bridging. So digging into Matrix itself, and so this is really kind of the middle bit of that diagram, how this actually plays out is you have these home servers in the middle, which are really the sort of core of the protocol. These are the things that are doing all the synchronization. This is entirely decentralized network and protocol. You have clients that connect into given home servers. The application servers are the things that talk to bridges and let you talk out of the network. And then finally you have identity servers, which are basically phone books and allow you to map third-party identifiers like email addresses or phone numbers if you want it, to help you find people within Matrix. You don't need to use an identity server to use Matrix. You can be entirely anonymous if you so wish. But the one thing that's really, really important to think about with Matrix versus lots of other messaging technologies is this is not a message passing framework. Sorry, I'll shout as loud as I can. This is not a message passing framework. This is something that synchronizes conversation history. And that's completely by design. And what it means is if one of these home servers disappears for 2 weeks, they just go away and then comes back, that person on that home server just resynchronizes in conversation, can pull everything in, they don't miss a thing, and they can just carry on talking as if they hadn't been away. And it's a really, really important thing to understand about Matrix, that really what we're doing is creating an eventually consistent conversation history synchronization fabric. And this is really this idea. No single party owns your communications. Conversation is shared across all participants. So if there's three people having a conversation, there's no central point of control where that conversation lives. It lives equally across each of those three nodes. Any questions on that bit? Because it's kind of core to the whole protocol. Sorry?
What does it mean when you say they're shared over all participants?
Oh, so yeah. So the question is, what does it mean that they're shared over? The information is shared over all participants. And yes, the answer is very much it's replicated across all participants in an eventually consistent manner. So it's decentralized. We have consensus algorithms at place, but we're not doing sort of blockchain-y type stuff. It can be eventually consistent when everyone catches up. And that's kind of an acceptable trade-off when you're producing a chat app versus a financial instrument. All right, so that's the kind of whistle-top tour of what Matrix is supposed to be. I just want to talk about how we actually use this stuff in the wild and how people are actually getting value out of this kind of technology. So I'm going to start with a bit of a history of the project. We got going in kind of 2014. And really got things to the point where they could federate and bridge into other protocols. We started with IRC because that's where we all grew up. We also launched a client, which looks, clients into Matrix look like things like WhatsApp or look like things like Slack. If you have that mental image, that's roughly where it is. I'll actually demo some of this to you in a moment so you can actually see it. But 2015, that's kind of where we were at. We had something that sort of federated, sort of worked. We had a decent client, and we were starting to get some interest in the project. People started using this stuff. 2016, people really sort of came to the table, and we got very busy trying to scale it. We wanted to add end-to-end encryption because, if you're going to have a decentralized communication system where you are synchronizing all these conversations, you really need end-to-end encryption because otherwise your data is going everywhere, and you might not want to share that. We also renamed Vector, the client at the time, to Riot because marketing. 2017, we hit a few problems. We were struggling to fund the project. And as is always the case in that situation, we did shiny things, and we made sticker packs, and we did video conferencing, and we created a sense of communities where you could group rooms together, and just generally things that we could talk about. As a technique, this worked, and we got ourselves in a much more stable position in 2018, where we just stopped everything and focused really on security and stability and governance of the project, and just tried to get all the foundation fundamentals just right. That work paid off, and 2019 we released a 1.0, and that basically just means we think this is ready for very serious production use. So that's our history. And this is giving an idea of sort of the growth of the network. This is daily active users on the Public Federation. This goes back and starts in 2016. 2018, you'll remember I kept talking about stability and performance and security stuff. That is our summer of discontent right there. And we had to work real hard to fix it, and as soon as we did, we started boosting up again. And then this one just shows people's nodes on the network. Any person in this circle, if you want to run your own Matrix node, you can. It's all open source. You can just run it yourself. You join the Open Federation. No one says you can't. This is only the number of people that will tell us about themselves. Lots of people run their home servers dark. We think there's probably about double this number in the wild. And then here's just a bunch of stats. I won't dwell too long on it, but what I want to point out is there are about 400 different projects building on top of Matrix. There's the kind of core teams projects which produce clients like Riot, but there's just a huge number of clients and bots and bridges out there that the community are providing. For this, it's on GitHub. Everything is there. The only thing that isn't there are some of the Ansible playbooks of how we actually deployed it into their systems. So naturally, that bit isn't public, but everything else, all the technology that they're running is there, and you can go and look at it and watch us working on it. And there were 5.5 million French civil servants, by the way, so that's a big old group. The idea is initially they want to run this internally, so it's just the way that government business is conducted internally, and then to the future, very excitingly, they want to make this be something that openly federates. So if you are a French citizen, the way that you can talk to your government is through a tool like Matrix, which is super, super cool. Matrix 1.0, what does this mean? Why are we excited about it? And why am I sort of jumping up and down about this? So, as I said, this was really about us getting to the point where we felt that we had enough components that we could really look someone in the eye and say, this is ready for production use. And if you like all of these properties, if you like the fact that it's decentralized, you like the encryption, then you can really put some very serious things on this. And you know, French government examples are a pretty good case study. If they're using it, then we feel as long as we flesh out all the extra use cases that they don't care about, then we've got something really, really powerful. So our sort of history was start off right in the beginning, just make it work. 1.0 was really this sort of, let's make it work right. Let's actually make this be really, really secure in every case. And now we've moved into a new phase where it's let's make this wonderful and make it fast and make it deeply excellent. So I'm going to just jump through some of the things that went into our 1.0. But at the core of Matrix, the thing that's probably the hardest part of it is the consensus algorithm. And it's really hard to get right. We put up with something that was very good at achieving consensus. It worked in that regard, but sometimes the way that rooms would achieve consensus, it was counterintuitive to a human. Weird things happened. It was mathematically correct, but it was just weird and people didn't like it and we didn't like it. So we had a good old go at fixing that and we're now very happy with it. I'm not going to go down this whole list. I'm just going to jump forward. But I think some of these items are probably more interesting if you've sort of really lived and breathed some of the pain points that they threw up. But fundamentally, we got to the point where we're saying we really believe in our protocol. We think this is solid. We have no known security items open with it. And we're very happy. And then we've gone to, we've done 1.0. Let's go and have some fun with this stuff. At the same time, governance, that's kind of important. We were a young protocol, but we didn't really have a formal governance structure, and lots of companies were starting to build on Matrix. So we needed something that was neutral, and the way that we did that, we have 8 people who manage the technical aspects of the spec, and they basically are in charge of making sure that's going in the right direction. And then we have 5 guardians who are, say, you know, is what you're doing actually for the greater good here, and just make sure that we don't get strong-armed by one of the companies building on top of Matrix, and just basically keeping us honest. Right, so I'm again going to skip over, I think, some of this stuff. Since 1.0, which is in the summer, we've just worked really, really, really hard to make this stuff work fast. And in particular, you know, you imagine, as we described Matrix, it's basically a network of servers. We run the largest, it's matrix.org, and this is really to kind of bootstrap the project. But the skills and the characteristics of that piece of software, it's all tuned for being a really large instance. And most people, what we actually want people to do is run their own servers. So we spend a lot of time, and they're still spending a lot of time right now, trying to think about that small use case. You're running it on a Raspberry Pi, you're running it on a very low-powered VPS. How can we make this be a really, really nice experience for you? So you don't have to rely on matrix.org, you don't have to trust us, you can just own your own data. And this is just a graph to show how hard we've been working on performance. If you think this is response time of sending messages, over the summer we were kind of somewhere awful on matrix.org between 1 and 3 seconds, which is just terrible. And then more recently we're now sort of sub 50 milliseconds to send a message, and we think that that's an acceptable place to be. Bear in mind, this is the most heavily loaded, largest instance on the Federation. If you're just running your own personal one, it's going to go really fast anyway because it won't be so loaded. Other stuff that we've been building into it, things like edits and reactions. We've thrown away our Android app. If you've used Matrix and you've used the Android app, please check out Riot X. It's a complete reimagining of how you build a Matrix client, and we think it's super cool. We've made it really easy now to verify people for E2E encryption. We have a service called Pantalignment, which means that bots can start to talk our end-to-end protocol without having to actually go and implement that. We are bridging into XMPP, which is a new bridge for us. We're thinking about, we use HTTP as our main transport today. We think we could do better, and we've been experimenting with new transports that require less bandwidth. And finally, cross-signing E2E devices. Matrix is really thinking about group chats. So if you imagine a situation where today, you know, if I have 3 devices and maybe you have 3 devices, I just want to verify that you are you, and I don't want to have to verify each of your devices, and that's what cross-signing allows us. We've also spent a bunch of time on privacy and helping our users understand where their data is going. We have a really complex data model. You'll remember I talked earlier about the sort of phone book system that's the identity server. And those servers tend to work better when they're quite large and lots of people use the same one. And that can be quite tricky because you might not realize where your data is going as you add a phone number or you add an email to your account. So we spent a whole bunch of time trying to fix that, and I think we're in way, way better shape as a result. Right, let's move on. What's next? What are we going to do? I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to do a demo, and then we'll do some questions, and I'll come and sit down, and we'll just have a chat. So 2020 is all going to be about thinking about user experience. I think when we've got decentralized projects, we often end up with some really great tech, but you get to the point where you can't recommend it to your friends, or you can't recommend it to your non-techie friends because it's hard, or it's weird, or it's intimidating. And this is definitely true of Riot, our sort of flagship client in Matrix, and we want to change that. So we're going to spend a good chunk of time next year and this year trying to fix that up. We need to switch end-to-end encryption by default for direct messages. At the moment, it's optional, and we need to make it much clearer, what this chat actually is. Is it an encrypted chat or not? Decentralized accounts, which basically means portability across the network. Launch this whole Riot X thing, which is our brand spanking new mobile client, and have a little think about P2P Matrix. At the moment, you have to have a home server. There's nothing in the protocol that means that's the case. It's just that right now, the only implementations exist on the server side. You could just implement this whole thing on the client side. We've done a few proof of concepts, nothing that we could put in production right now. And then the final thing, which is very topical for the session I just came from, which is decentralized reputation. Our network is growing and growing and growing and growing. Topics of abuse management, moderation, just generally knowing where you might want to, who you might want to interact with. These are all hard problems to solve in a decentralized network. And we're just at the beginning of that process of trying to figure out how to solve that problem. We don't have a solution for it yet. We think it's a hard problem. Right, demo time. I've kind of got two things. I'm just going to show you Riot, just so you can see it and all the rest. And I'm going to show you the room that is the decentralized groups matrix room. And then I'm going to use the command line, and I'm going to send a message into that room. So I can show you quite how easy it would be to write a bot or a client to talk in that room. My boss tells me that we're not allowed to do these demos we're not allowed to do these talks without some kind of demo. And this is my homage to a demo. Oh, hang on, let's not do that. Oh dear, go away. I want to show these people this great thing. Well, that's unusual. Okay. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So this probably looks kind of familiar to anyone that's used Slack or Discord or Mattermost or any of those things. There's not too much that's exciting going on here. On the left, you've got a bunch of rooms. On the far left, you've got sort of communities, which are kind of like groups of rooms. So I can, this is like the Matrix community, and this is our GSOC Google Summer of Code community. And then on the right, I can, a whole bunch of people that happen to be in this room. By the way, is anyone here in this room? Is anyone in the Redecentralize room? No? Okay, right. So if I can actually drive my computer, what I'm going to do is pull up a terminal, and I'm going to send a message on my behalf. That's me asking what on earth I should talk about in this thing. And we'll send a message, and I'll show you how easy that is, because you can do it in a simple curl command to do that. So let's do that. And so all this is really just saying is, hello from Redecentralize 2019. I talk about the place I'm going to send it to, so matrix.org. I'm saying what room I'm going to choose, which is this room, and I have to give an access token, which is basically how I log in. So if I press enter, we should see this on the left-hand side, me appearing to speak. Come on. I did test this a few minutes earlier. I'm just wondering if I've got the connectivity. I think I have. Well, that's annoying. Anyway, I don't know why I can't speak out. What you would have been seeing is me over here appearing to speak and say hello from Decentralize. I'm going to leave that up in the background. Right, I have lost internet connectivity, so that's a real shame. Let's just see if I can bring it up, and if not, I'll move on to something else. Do I have anything? No Wi-Fi at all. Oh, there's looks like Wi-Fi, so let's try it again. Was it just teasing me, or have I got Wi-Fi? Hooray! There it is, on the left-hand side. I wasn't lying. Brilliant. So, just to explain what I've done there, Matrix is basically just a bunch of HTTP APIs. You can black JSON at it, and it will do stuff. In this case, I just tried to send a message, and it landed in a room, and there it appears, and Write is rendering it for us. But the reason I wanted to show you that was to show you how extensible Matrix is and how easy it is to build on top of it. You can build a whole Matrix client in about 10 lines of bash. We did this recently just to prove that that statement was true. We made it a bit too aggressive and did all sorts of bad things, but it's totally possible to do exactly that. Right, great. Oh, I've done very peculiar things there. Let's not worry about that. So my final thing, and then I want to just talk about questions, just asking for help, really. Imploring people, don't use proprietary services for your chat, or at least understand why you're doing so. Have a think about that. If you want to give Matrix a spin, the easiest possible way for you to do this is to sign up to Riot, which is at riot.in. It's all free, just sign up and you get in and go. Or there's a whole bunch of other clients. If you don't want to use the Riot client and you want something that's more terminal orientated, there's like hundreds and hundreds of clients you can use at various levels of maturity. If you've done that and you're actually really into this, we'll have a go at running your own server. Now this can be quite challenging, and you can self-host it, or you can use a provider like Modular, and that will self-host it for you, or host it on your behalf. And then the final thing is, have a think about, is Matrix a good fit for your organization? Either maybe a community group, or just a sort of local community thing, or maybe you're part of a much larger group, maybe you're working for some sort of civic organization where this whole sort of data privacy and very, very structured org comes into play. Come and have a chat with us, and we can help you migrate or advise you how to do that. Or if you want to do it piecemeal in bits and you want to, maybe everyone's really, really, really keen on Slack, and half the company are happy to go to Matrix, and you want to bridge that in. Gentlemen like Halfshot over here can help you achieve that. It's exactly what Matrix does. And that's it. We're done. No more talking from me. Just questions from you until we all get bored of this, and then we can go and populate and pollinate across the conference. All right, so that was kind of high tempo. Yeah, can I answer any questions?
In the heat map you showed with the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Where it was the message send time was infinite. Was there some kind of global infrastructure event?
Where it was infinite?
Yeah, plus infinite.
Oh, right. Okay, so the question was, just because I'm on a mic, I was just asking what on earth is going on there, and did we really have an infinite session? I mean, I think what it's actually doing is it's between 10 seconds and infinity. So it's a log scale. So it wasn't actually infinite. I don't even know how we would measure. I think all it's really saying is, because matrix.org is by far and away the largest server in the Federation, it's under a lot of heavy load. We're continually tuning. It's great. Yeah. There's all sorts of. It's a very complex system because you have the whole federation talking to it, and so this is a really, really good way to make sure that we're being honest when we say this stuff performs, because we push it to a limit, fix those limits, push it a bit more, push it a bit more, push it a bit more. The problem we always have for performance for matrix.org is every single time we hit a wall and we smash through it, we think, great, we've got some headroom now, and then a few months later, a whole bunch of other people have joined on. So don't use matrix.org, run your own stuff, it will be great.
In the first slides, the way that you presented, I had the impression that Matrix is something that allows you to connect to a wide variety of existing services.
Yes.
Or existing clients that are. And later on, I got the impression that it's actually something else. It's more a different client that you use instead of those other services. How does it work?
Oh, okay. So the question is, initially I was talking a bit about bridging and bridging into other chat services, and then towards the end I was really talking about native Matrix and just showing also Matrix users, but they're not, and they are on IRC or on some other service. So in that Redecentralize room, I don't know if that is a bridged room or not. I just wanted to check. All right, okay, great. So this gentleman they may have some, there may be some little like M, brackets M behind my name if I was to reply. But the idea is that you use Riot, you can talk to Matrix people. That's probably the richest experience because the protocols, it's the same protocol. But you can also talk to XMPP. Lots of organizations really rely heavily on email, and this doesn't, and this is instant messaging, not email. It's a different technology. It's a much more modern. You only need to look at something like Slack in a commercial setting, or Microsoft Teams actually as well, which is growing even faster, to show that people have a need for this kind of stuff. But if you do today. Oh yeah, so the question is, how can you be preaching about decentralization in the context in the way that we have set it up for the French? You cannot interoperate in. Like they don't have that support there.
They're basically running it sort of as a localized decentralized service.
Right. So what they hope to do is to federate openly. So from here, I could reach members of the French government. But what you can
I then send a message to WhatsApp?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the question is, can you send a message to WhatsApp via Riot? Yes, you can. Absolutely. So you set up the bridge, and then it's just like you're talking. Sorry, my colleagues are adding a few extra questions for me. What year is it? Who's the president? Goodness. When you're bridging, it's always the lowest common denominator of all those protocols. So, and the other part is because there's no open standard for end-to-end encryption yet. There will be one soon. There's no way to have an end-to-end encrypted conversation with your contact on WhatsApp via Matrix right now because the bridge in the middle has to decode on both sides. So once MLS is the thing and we all can agree what that protocol looks like, then you might be able to have a truly end-to-end encrypted conversation cross-protocol, which would be pretty awesome.
That's great, because I don't have WhatsApp installed on my phone, because I don't want them to have access to my contacts, for example.
Right.
I could set up with Riot, and I can send messages from Riot to WhatsApp.
That's right. I mean, you still end up needing some access into the WhatsApp network, and that does require a handset, but it doesn't have to be a physical handset. So you could host like an Android VM that's notionally your handset, and then so you don't actually ever have to have that on your phone. I'm sorry?
The pictures that we see in the chat after each message, what do they signify?
Oh, so the question is, what are these? What are these things here? These are read receipts. Read receipts. So it's hard. This is a really, really big room, but if you imagine a case where you're in a room and there's, say, 5 people, it's really, really helpful, naturally to know who's read your message. And it's just quite a nice visual cue. You sort of see someone come online and then you see their face sort of drop down over time. So that's what that is. It's just a sort of some sort of visual sugar, I guess, to denote this person, Matthew, has read this message. And because you get very finely tuned on what everyone's avatars are, you very quickly can sort of decode all these symbols.
The French example that you gave earlier, so will the French civil servants be expected or required to download Riot or use Riot, or what would they be using as a client?
Oh, so they have their own client. Let me show you a shot of it. Sorry. So the question was, in the French case, are they using Riot or are they using something else? They're using something else. They're using Chat, and it is. I guess you could describe it as a sort of simplified client in some cases. They have a more specific use case. And this is just a picture of it. It probably resembles WhatsApp more than it resembles Slack, I would say. And that just sort of suits their case. They also have some color coding for various security zones. So if you are talking to someone very senior in government, say, there's a sort of visual prompt to remind you that you're in this zone or in this other zone. If you're in a more public area, you can tell very, very quickly, and that's just helpful for them, just from how people are using the app. And they also have a whole bunch of extra specific rules around who can invite who to a chat. So who can invite who to a conversation. So you can't go in as the most junior administrator and be DMing Macron on day one. They've got some extra rules around that kind of stuff, which I think you need in an organization of that sort of size. All right. Well, look, thank you. It was a bit noisy at times, so thank you for sticking through with it. I'm going to wrap this up, but if you have any one-on-one questions, please do come and have a chat. And as I say, try out Riot, give it a go. If it's great, wonderful. If it's terrible, come tell me about it. You can reach me here. This is my Matrix ID right there, and I'm on Twitter at @NeilIsFragile. And just tell if it's no good. I want to know.